Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we're going to wire up the Hotbar UI that we made in the last video. So 90% of this video will be us just working straight in Monogame. Here on the screen, you can see that I've got a demo of what we're going to be doing here. We can actually click on the different items, and it tells us what we've clicked on, tells us the quantity, if it has any, things like that. We can see that we've got the durability showing up, the slot numbers, the rarity. In addition to that, if I click this button here, we can just change between a few of them at random. So we'll be able to do all of these items, and we'll also add in these two other objects as well. This is where we left off last time, where we were displaying this in the UI, but there's no functionality yet. I went ahead and bumped up the resolution and added this zoom factor so that when I hit play here, it will be easier to see in this video than it was in the previous video. Most of our work is going to be in Monogame, so let's get the gumtool work out of the way. Go ahead and open up your gum project. First thing, let's add in that button and the label. So we'll grab a button standard, drop it on the screen, and then we'll grab a label, drop that on the screen. Just going to place the label down here so that it's not on top of the button. Just give it some size. Change this to 720 so it looks closer to what we want to see in the game. Name the button Randomize, and I'll name the label here Status Info. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to our our item slot, and we're going to make a change to it because this object is so complex with other components that are on it, and it also has children on those. So we've got grandchildren and great-grandchildren components and elements. To prevent issues where when we try to click on the item slot, one of these other items takes control of the click, takes focus of that click, what we're going to do is on the item slot, go all the way down to the bottom of the variables, and we're going to uncheck expose children events. This will make it so that the click event will not happen for any of these items. It will only happen here at the item slot layer. Additionally, in the previous video, I forgot to expose this text variable or text value here on the quantity text instance. So let's do that now. Let's expose variable as quantity. And the last change, let's go to the hotbar and let's just manually change the, zoom in a bit here so you can see, we'll change the hotbar number so that they're all not the same value and they correspond correctly. So let's just manually change these 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now with them all changed, they appropriately show the information. We could do this in code. I'm just going to do it right here in the UI. I'm already here. We don't want them to ever change anyways. Change them here. All right, that's it for gum. Let's go back to Monogame. We need to do a little work to add functionality so we can update things every frame inside our hotbar screen. To do this, we're going to create an interface, and we're going to use that interface to make sure that each screen has the specific method that we can call. So in your screens folder, we're going to add a new interface. Call it iUpdateScreen. In it, we're just going to add a blank update signature here, and then the using directive for Microsoft XNA framework. I'm also going to make this public. Get rid of these other usings. All right, now we can work on the item slot selection for those mouse clicks. First thing we're going to do is just add some quick code to the hotbar just to make sure that we can validate that clicking is actually working. Over here on hotbar in the custom initialize, we're going to add a little bit of code. This for each loop is going to loop over all the children of the hotbar specifically the children inside the inner stack panel. These are the different slots. And going to add a method that will run whenever we click on them. To fix this warning, I'm just going to make sure I add in the using gum forms controls. And to fix this next warning, I'm just going to paste in the code I've already written for handling the item slots. We need to make sure that we're using the system, and then down here, making sure we're using system diagnostics. Inside of this method, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the sender, and we're going to convert it into this actual interactive graphical user element. Once we do that, we have to get that forms control out of it. So we grab that, and then we convert that finally to our item slot. Then we can set that item slot's selected value to true. If you recall in the previous video, this is a variable that we just exposed directly instead of using categories and states. Let's just test this and see it in action. Looks like I had an extra bracket here that I forgot about. Remove that and fix that. Okay, now let's see if these will respond to click events. It did respond, and it did actually set this to highlighted. But what we'll notice is that every single one of these is now highlighted because I've clicked on it one time. So we need some functionality added to make sure that when we click on something different, all the other slots are cleared. To do that, what we're going to do is keep track of the selected index within this list of what you've clicked on. We'll also add a convenience event handler on the item slot so that working with it isn't as messy and we don't have to do as many casts like we did earlier. So we won't have to do this many casts. Let's leave the test code alone for now. Let's jump over to the item slot, and we're going to add in an event handler so that it can have its own click event. Before I do, this is basically just to simplify this part. So instead of calling the child, which is the item slot, and then from that point grabbing its visual and then grabbing the click, we can directly call .click on the item slot. We're going to add a little hook here so that in our custom initialize, we will still call the click, but we're basically just forwarding this click on to our own click event that we're going to have. All right, now let's go back to Hotbar, and we can update Hotbar so that it has a little helper alias or property. This will make it easier for us to get the slot number. So this will just grab the specific index child, and we can use this just like a method. Let's add in the private variable and then the property for the selected instance. What we're doing here is we are first making sure the values have changed before we do any work. Then we are clearing the previous value as long as it has one. So we're setting the current slots selected to false. Then we will set the selected index, and then we will change the selected value on that new index to true. All right, and now that we've updated the children, the item slot itself, we can set this to that, and we can actually get rid of this visual because we exposed that click event. Additionally, we can clean up the handle item slot clicked a little bit. One of the things that we want to do is that all of this can be simplified into a single cast here. And that's because over an item slot, we are now controlling this clicks invoking, and we are passing back this. And what is this? This is an item slot. So that simplifies these casts. And then we no longer want to set the selected directly. We want all of that to happen through this public property. So we will change this into us grabbing the information directly from there. So this error is because there is an extension method that we need. So let's go ahead and grab that extension method just by adding this using monogame gum.extension methods. And now we have this index of extension method for us. All right, we should get the same behavior pretty much now, with the added benefit that when we click on something else, the previous thing that was highlighted is no longer highlighted. Next up, let's add in pressing the keys 1 through 9 on the digit row above the home keys. We're going to add a new method here called handle keyboard input. All this is going to do is get the keyboard and then check to see if one of those keys above the home row is pressed, the 1 through 9, and then convert those keys into 0 through 8. Once we have the index, then we'll set the index. We need to call this method from the update method over on the Hotbar screen every frame. So let's go do that. We're going to go to the Hotbar screen. First thing we need to do is make sure this implements our iUpdate. It's giving us an error because we don't have an update method yet. So we'll go ahead and just tell it to implement that. I want these to be down below though, so let's move these down. All right, so we've got one level, but nothing is calling us, so we need to go up one level. We're going to go up to the game1 CS class, and we're going to make sure that it updates. Game1, we'll go down to the update method here, and after gum has done its updates, we're just going to loop over all of the children that are in the root, which there should just be the one. There should just be our screen, and that's it. And then from there, we're going to run the update method because we're casting this to the iUpdate screen interface, which allows us to then call this update method. All right, I should be able to run this now, and I should be able to click, but I should also be able to press keys, and I should be able to change the slot, and I can. Great. All right, the next part is going to be the bulk of our work. We're going to set up the item creation. Now the gum objects are really UI elements, and so we don't want to put all the code and all the logic and all the functionality and the data in them. So we're going to create our own item class that we can pass into the slots to tell the slot what it should display. Let's create a folder called data. So add folder data. We'll create a new class in here. We're going to call this one inventory item. And rather than bore you with writing all this out, I'm just going to copy paste and then change my project to Hytale Hotbar. So copy paste, Hytale Hotbar. There we go. Oh, looks like I've got a typo there. What you'll notice here though is that we have an error on rarity. And this is because I made the inventory item itself up here public, but all gum objects are created without a designator like public, private, or protected. And because it has no designator by default, these gum objects like Hotbar, they are all essentially internal. And why that matters is that because internal is more restrictive than public, we get this error message. There are a few different ways to fix this. I'm just going to do the easiest way. You can fix this however you prefer. Since this enum exists on item rarity background, I'm just going to go over to item rarity background. I'm just going to make this public. Notice I opened up the one that is not the generated file. So I did not open up the .generated version. I opened up the other one. You don't ever want to modify the generated files. All your changes will get overwritten. The reason this works is that something that's less restrictive, like public, can always be put or made less restrictive. There's no issue with that. And we can save this, go back over here, and see that our error is actually gone. Just make sure you put public first. It's not partial public class. It's public partial class. I'm just going to do a little pause for a second so you can see this whole thing I pasted in, top to bottom. If I scroll down, that's basically all it is. Okay, this is all the instance information, but we want to be able to store some of the non-changing attributes about each item, like the sprite's positioning, or what type of object it is. Is it a tool? Is it a weapon? Those types of pieces of data, we don't want to be storing those over and over again in each instance. So we're going to create an inventory item definition class now. Inventory item definition. As with the inventory item, I'm going to copy and paste information in, just change the namespace. You can get this from my GitHub, or you can look at the video and retype it if you wish. Okay, I've pasted that in here. This is going to hold the name of the item, the position of the top left of the texture. Since we're using all the same texture sizes, we don't need to store more than that. And then the item category, and that's defined as weapon, tool, crafting, block, whatever. Next, we need something that will actually build up an inventory and keep the inventory and have this information of all of these different items. And so for that, we're going to create a service. And so we need a services folder. So let's create a new folder called services. We'll create a new class called inventory service. And again, using the magic of editing, I'm just going to paste this in. And we're going to change this to my Hytale Hotbar project. Same thing with these usings. And these dictionaries are just for the definitions of the items. Those are those values that don't change between them. For the instances that are going to be in each slot, though, we need 5 rows of 9 items. And then another little helper method here. This is going to give us back the hotbar inventory index position. So if I want to get the 6th item, well, I don't want to have to remember that it's 6 plus 9 times 4. We're just going to do that for ourselves. We have this convenient method. Down below, all we're doing then is we're populating the details about the name, the position of the starting, and then the category for each of the items that are in our sprite sheet. Back in game 1, though, we need to keep track of our services, and we also need to create this service. So we're going to add a variable to our game 1 CS class up at the top here that will contain our services. And then under initialize, we're going to add these 2 lines of code. This just allows us to get access to the inventory service without passing around objects to the individual child classes. All right, over in Hotbar screen, we're going to create a variable for the service that we're going to be using. And then in the custom initialization here, we're going to add in we're going to create that instance, grabbing it from the services, and then over here, we're going to call setupRandomHotbar. And the reason why is that we want the values to have, or we want the hotbar to have something in it when it starts. We don't want it to be empty for this demo, and we don't want it to be the invalid information. So we want to actually populate the hotbar and the item inventory with the correct values. I like to keep the update method at the very end, so I'm going to put all of our methods between custom initialize and update. This one, set up random hotbar. This will go through the different positions, and then it will randomly select an item, create that item, and add it as a slot item. Before we create random items, though, let's get access to random. If you're doing a full game, you'll probably want a better way to do random so you have consistency in your random. That's especially important for games like Hytale and Minecraft, where world generation usually uses a randomization value, a seed, so that every time that you create that same world, you're using the same random values in the same order. This is just a demo, so I'm just going to put it right here. Next, I'm adding in this method, the setSlotToRandom. We're going to get a random element amongst the total number of elements that are in our dictionary. So this will give us that item definition. Then we're going to pick a random value for rarity, and then we're going to create that item with a random quantity and a random durability. Since we didn't go all the way with our convenience method, it's not a full property, we can't access and then change the values. So I'm going to get access to the service, get the inventory. This is all nine items and 5 rows of them. And we're going to manually grab the start index for where the hotbar is, add the index value we chose before, and then we're going to update that inventory slot, that hotbar inventory slot, to equal our item. This ensures that later on, when we need to come back and we need to figure out what was actually in the inventory, that's all stored here, and we don't have to try to store stuff in the visual. Now we need a method on the slot, the item slot, that will take the actual inventory item and the inventory definition and then update the visual information for us. Back over in item slot, I'm going to add in both of these methods, and then I'll go over them. Let's fix this import that's missing. So these are those 3 imports that I needed to add. So this is just going to take that item, take the definition, and then populate the information, change the visual to be the way it needs to be. First off, we're clearing some values out or changing some states. These are those visibility properties that we exposed as states. And then in most of these types of games, including Hytale, items don't really have durability unless they are a weapon or a tool. So I'm just using that information to determine whether or not we should show the durability or not. If it is one of these 2 items, I'm going to set the durability, which is another method down further. Change the quantity to 1, just because items that have durability in most of these games, they don't have the ability to have more than 1 on the same stack. If, however, it is not a weapon or a tool, then we want to make sure that the quantity is displayed. So as long as the quantity exists and it's not 0 or 1, we're going to go ahead and display the quantity. And actually, this is a holdover from before. I was previously doing this a little bit differently, so I don't need to actually cast this anymore. We set the rarity value. This is the rarity category. And then we pull out that static information that doesn't change from the definition, which defines where the top left of the sprite's source rectangle should be. For set durability, just to make it look a little bit more realistic, I just added in some different colors depending upon the durability level. When the durability level is less than 5, I make it red. Otherwise, if it's less than 25, orange, less than 50, yellow, and then the default value would be then this green color up here. All right, that's a lot of work. Let's just make sure it's working before we move on. All right, it looks like it's working. I can still click on things. I can still press numbers. This button and this label don't do anything yet, and that's the last piece of the puzzle here. How do we actually get information about the thing we're clicking on so that we can make informed decisions in our game, so that when somebody selects this item, it changes what item is held in the player's hand, or what action they perform when they right click. For instance, let's say they're eating their vegetables. So back on the hotbar screen, go over here. We are going to go to the custom initialize, and we're just going to make sure that the randomize button's click event will fire. And when it fires, we want it, let's go, I'm going to put it right here. We want it to fire, and we want it to run the setup random hotbar again. Right, that was a small change, but let's just test it out anyways. Okay, it's random. If you want to change the text here, you could do it in the gumtool. You could do it here. Let's just do it here, since we're right here anyways. Randomize. I'll just say randomize. That works. Okay. So now it says randomize instead of click me. All right, and the last part is the label. So to configure the label, we need a way to know when the hotbar's selected index, when that selected index value has changed up in the hotbar screen. We could simply put in something in the update method that polls to check to see it every frame, but that's a bit excessive. We only really want to call that when it changes. So instead, we can use a custom event that is basically just a call to our own function we can subscribe to. For that, we're going to go to the hotbar component itself, and up at the top, inside the class, we're going to add an event handler called SelectedIndexChanged. And then any part of your game that needs to know when that hotbar index changed can subscribe to this event. So what we'll do is, where does this selected index get changed? Well, it gets changed in this property. And so we'll go down to the end of this. And after we do all of this work, if we changed it, then we're going to invoke this event, and then we'll have code that will handle that and subscribe to this. So we're going to go back over to the hotbar screen this time. And on the hotbar screen, here's where we're going to actually subscribe or listen to this event and write code that will run whenever this event is fired. I'm just going to use a lambda for this one. So inside of here, just add in the custom initialize, this little bit of code. So fire when the selected index changes on the hotbar component. This will get the index, then it will get the slot item information, then it will get the item definition, and then it will use that information to display the quantity and the name to us on the screen. If there's no issues or typos, let's see what happens. Run this and, yep, mushroom, iron block, or emerald, hide, etc. And we can randomize, and we click on something, it should change. Okay, I know this was a lot of code. Again, I have my code on GitHub. You can grab it from there. You can pause the video and type it out if you want to do that instead. You can use it as an example and write your own code. But now you have full control over creating new items, creating new instances of those items, and then setting those to a specific slot on the hotbar. We also now have this inventory service. So all of this work is going to be reused in the next video, the inventory video that's coming up. In fact, I'm hoping that those videos are going to be much shorter since we've already written the foundational code for our inventory system and the hotbar. Thank you for watching. Stop by the Discord, contribute on GitHub, or comment below.